What we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party. Peace and love, party people. It's the BKMC, the MCEO, Talib Kweli. You are now in tune with the world's best podcast, People's Party. And as usual, and as always, I have my lovely and talented and funny and thought-provoking co-host, Jasmin Leigh, in the place to be. What up, Jasmin? How you feeling?
Talib, I really want to tell you how I'm feeling, but I don't want to ruin it. And I'm just so excited to say this phrase when the time comes.
Oh.
So let's get started.
You've been saying this phrase
Since
at
the show
inappropriate
started.
times since we started this show.
Yes.
And so today's episode is a chef's kiss for you.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Well, today's guest is someone who I've known for a long time, but when you're on a river with someone, I mean this, you really get to know somebody. Mm-hmm. You know, and me and this man, we have had the pleasure of being on rivers all over the planet, actually. You know, just kayaking and talking about life. I love nature, he doesn't. But we're gonna get into that later. Our guest today is one of the greatest modern voices in boxing. He has made himself this way through sheer will and determination. He's a deep thinker, thoughtful interviewer, and someone who always approaches the love of boxing with genuine passion. He is a journalist, a reporter for DAZN. That's DAZN. Boxing. A broadcaster for Seconds Out Live, as well as the host of the Luminary. We're on Luminary right now, to everybody who's paying attention. Luminary original podcast, To This Day, where he goes deep with artists, thinkers, comedians, fighters, many people, icons of the culture, about how they carved out their own respective paths. This man right here is not simply another talking head, but rather a man who meets people where they are at and connects with them authentically with compassion. He is a personal friend. I'm excited to interview him on a People's Party. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Radio Rahim and a place to be. Radio Rahim.
That was a pretty aggressive hand slap.
Oh man, this is
You haven't been on the river.
I have not.
Yeah, me
I'm
and Radio
salty
Rahim
about it.
got to know each other really on the river because Donnell Rawlings tells a story about how you don't like to row.
Lazy riverer.
What's the origin of that story?
Grew up watching television. I thought river rafting was something the river did. I didn't realize once I got the raft and got on the river that there was still more required of me.
Yes.
In fact, I think this Ohio River is a little lazy.
Well, you and me started, you got your own kayak at some point.
I had to get my own kayak,
Right.
Because of all the abuse I was taking. You know what I mean? Like, I was being bullied. And so, if I'm on a raft with other people, there's no way to equally balance out who's doing what work. You know,
So you did
I'm
no
not
work.
about to call anybody out. You understand? But everybody doesn't weigh the same. Everybody doesn't have the same upper body strength. And I'm from the boxing community. You know, it's one man, one challenge for yourself. I'm not really a team sport guy.
That's
So-
hilarious because that's because you and me were actually, and I had a good time, but it wasn't my choice to be your kayak partner. No, we were
we weren't partners, in fact.
we were in Puerto Rico on the bioluminescent bay, and it was beautiful.
Yes.
There was other people, it wasn't just me and Rahim.
You're on a romantic gondola ride.
We've done so many. Now, okay, now, yes.
And
yes.
they said you had to because it's
had to
a
have
very
a partner.
supervised trip. So I was like, well, fuck it. If I have to have a partner, it might as well be somebody I know.
First of all, when they said I had to have a partner, if Kweli's not doing this with me, I'm not going. Because we have river history.
Right.
You know what I mean? I respect his river hustle.
But I have a question because something is not quite. You said that because you cannot say who's doing more work than the other, you decided to not row at all, to just sit there and let everyone else row you.
See, these little minor details, as Trump would say, are inaccurate, but somehow illuminating. Yes, I don't believe that it was recounted in an accurate fashion. I just
It
didn't
was
row.
dressed up for show business.
It was, Yes, it's a joke. It's a joke, and I was the butt of it, and I took that in stride. Right. You know what I mean? Because the only way I could get out of that joke was to tell the real story. You know what I mean?
And what was the real story?
People want to hear the real story.
There were some people who were rowing, some people who should have been rowing that maybe should have been rowing more than everybody else that weren't rowing enough. There are other people who just couldn't row because they weren't in proper shape to do so. That's 3 other people, including me, right? On one raft, and the water is lower than the bottom of this table, right? So I'm saying if you just know the geometry of this situation, have any idea what weight does to water, somebody's going to have to do an awful lot of work. And being that I'm an only child and an individual sport guy, it's not going to be me.
Well, I would like to thank you for your constant and consistent support of my art and my music. You have been known to come to my shows when I didn't know you were even around. Like, I would just be looking in the audience, and Rahim is in the audience enjoying the show. And I'm like, you could have called me and been backstage. He's like, no. I like seeing the show from here.
I get there early so I can get like right up against the stage. I don't want any, because people, as the show goes on, they start talking to their girls. Also, I come alone. You notice I'm never out there with anybody else. I want nobody fucking my show up. You know what I mean? I put my t-shirt on. I'm here to sweat. Right. I'm here to jump. I'm here. Every time you say, wave your hands, I'm waving my hands. Yeah. I'm doing every song. And, it takes something from my experience, really, to have to say hello to you before and after.
Hilarious.
You're a real fan.
I don't have the energy for that. I'm here for these songs. You know what I mean? We can be friends tomorrow. We can be friends every day. Today, you're here to perform for me, and I'm going to get this out of my system.
I'm there to be backstage.
That's hilarious. Now, you and I, we talk about the river a lot. This is obviously in Yellow Springs where Dave Chappelle lives. And now you and Dave Chappelle are very, very good friends. Yes. You met him in China, right?
Macau, to be exact.
Okay.
Because Macau is not China.
Okay.
You understand?
Tell that story.
As you mentioned in your intro, I'm a boxing journalist, broadcast journalist, and this profession has taken me all over the world. And in this case, it was the first time I'd been to Macau for Manny Pacquiao versus Brandon Rios. Huge fight. First time Pacquiao had fought there. This was the biggest fight they'd ever seen. And the thing about Macau that people may not know is that while it's a part of China, it is unlike any other part of China, including even Hong Kong, because it moderns itself after Las Vegas. Hence the fight being, why don't we do a fight there? So if, for instance, you go to the Venetian in Las Vegas, and then the next day you end up at the Venetian in Macau, you already know where the bathroom is. It's designed exactly the same, and where all the lions are, you'll find dragons. And that's like essentially the difference. So this experience was so unique for me because I got to see what my impact was, having covered Manny Pacquiao from the beginning of his career in America. He started with Freddie Roach, a wild card boxing gym, also where I started my career before he arrived. But he was like the biggest new thing when he got there, except that he hadn't become known to the American boxing fan. But in Philippines, that was their guy. Right. He was over here in America. He was about to make good for the whole country. For me, I'm shooting every fighter. At this time, it was like the tail end of James Toney's career. And he was king of the gym when I started working at Wild Card. And the way I was working there was I was shooting sparring sessions for fighters. And I would give the tapes to Freddie. And this is how fighters started to train off of their sparring tape, which is something that any athlete in another sport is like, what do you mean started? That's a thing. You video the practice. Everybody sits around the room, watches the practice. Coach critiques you, the whole thing. Boxing is not like that. Boxing is a poor man's sport. So anything that costs a little bit of extra money, extra manpower, some technology or equipment, boxing is probably not doing that.
Right.
So this advent of the internet was, popping, but it wasn't YouTube yet. It certainly wasn't all these social media sites. It was websites. And so I was there shooting sparring sessions, trying to learn how to camera operate, because in my mind, I want to be a director. That's an old boys club. I don't want to climb that ladder the way you have to if you're black trying to climb an old boys club. I'm not doing all that shit. So I have to come up with like a unique skill, a set that I can be like, I'm really good at this. And I thought that would be camera operating. So even though I'm a film loader, like major motion pictures, I'm doing darkroom film loading magazines for major films. I was on Dr. Dolittle even. When I took my rig there, I thought this is going to be how I learn how to operate a camera, and I can present myself as a camera operator. That's how I'll learn how to direct. That's how I'll get on. And these sparring sessions, you only get one take. There's shadows. There's light coming from the back. Like, it had all the stuff you needed. But the reason I was at the gym in the first place is because boxing is a part of my very being, right? I've never been a competitive athlete. Like, I never thought for a second I was going to be an athlete by profession, but I've never not been in a boxing gym for sport. So that spirit of the fight has always been something that I've had to exercise out of myself every day. So I'm spending 2-3 hours in the boxing gym and then spending another 2 or 3 hours shooting other people in the boxing gym. Manny Pacquiao shows up, and this hotel is now torn down. But in the day, right next door to Wildcard, there was a place called the Vagabond Hotel. And boy, that was an apt name. This place was a shithole. And Manny Pacquiao showed up with 6 of his best Filipino brothers, and they shared one room.
Oh.
And the first time I ever interviewed Manny Pacquiao, I was sitting on an air conditioner in that room with the 6 other guys in there, and I'm using the air conditioner like protruding from the wall as a seat, and we got into it. And he would run the hills at Los Feliz Park, and he would run Pan Pacific, and I would shoot his training. Those tapes went up on a site called Max Boxing. And what ultimately happened was people in the Philippines who loved this guy, who this guy is their representative in the world, were ripping him off the internet and making DVDs. Now, you remember there was a time when DVDs was how you would watch a bootleg movie.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is what they would do in the Philippines and China, because it's all very close. We're selling my footage of Manny Pacquiao interviews, him training, him sparring, him hitting the pads like they were bootleg movies.
Right.
I did not know this. So I come over to China. I'm a huge celebrity.
Right.
Like, all these Chinese people know me. I knew the Filipinos knew me, right? But I thought that was because they were watching the stuff on the internet. So I was aware of that when I would interact with Filipino people at fights and in LA and stuff like this. But in China, I was shocked. Like, how do you know? And a dude showed me, he's like, here's DVD. I'm signing DVDs.
Right.
And it gave me, that was the first time I realized, well, how small the world is becoming. And that something was happening on the other side of the planet that I had no idea about. So it only inspired me to continue working even harder. So one of the things about me is, especially at that time, I wasn't doing anything else. Like, right now, I'm doing multiple things. Yeah. But in these days, I was living week to week, fight to fight, Saturday to Saturday, storyline to storyline of boxing. And so I'm the first guy in the press room. I'm the last guy out. And on one of these nights, in that week, I'm the last guy in the press room. There is a bar on the main floor of the Venetian. And then the press room was up like on the second floor of the stairs. So I'm coming down the stairs, walking out of the hotel because I can't afford to stay at the Venetian. I got to stay across the street at like the Holiday Inn or some shit. And so, remind me about this walk to the Holiday Inn, by the way. But so I gotta walk out of this hotel, and as I walk by the bar, I walk by Dave, right? But I'm in fucking China, and he just standing there by himself.
Macau.
Not China.
He's standing there by himself, smoking a cigarette. And so if I was in Brooklyn, I'd be like, that's Dave Chappelle before I even got to him.
Right.
But it took me like 7 or 8 steps past him to be like, was that Dave Chappelle? Is that even, all right. So I was like, well, I have to know. That's wild stuff. I turn around, take my walk back, and sure as shit, that's him.
Right.
strike up a conversation. And the fact that he's there for the fight, knows boxing, blows my mind. Obviously, I felt like, well, this is a moment. But also I felt like a calm over me. Like, have you ever had a moment that's super exciting and then something comes to you like, oh, this is supposed to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, somehow, as exciting as this should be, it feels supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask for no picture, didn't like nothing. It was just like we chatted for a minute like we were already all friends.
Mm-hmm.
I bounced. And then over the course of the week, we hung out. I introduced his sons to Manny Pacquiao. He brought his whole family to Macau to see the fight. You know, they're half Filipino, so they're super hyped. And it was the beginning of a fucking great relationship. And it was one of those moments in life that seems like so pivotal now looking back. But at the time, it seemed like exactly as the script was meant to go.
Yes,
There was never any awkwardness to it.
Now, you and I were both at the Hollywood Bowl when Dave was attacked. You have called it an assassination attempt, which I agree with. I just wanted to see if you could share your thoughts on that event and how you were feeling in that moment when you saw someone who was just so important to us as a culture and us as a people, but also such a good friend of yours being attacked that way.
It was reminiscent of trauma. I don't think that I have a unique experience with this, that we've all lost people along the way. My life experience has been such that I've lost people early and often along the way. So I was never unaware of how fragile life is or how quickly things can change. But in recent years, you know, life's changed. A lot of the dangers that you and your friends would cavalierly engage in are things of the past. So I'm not losing friends like I might have been in my teens and early 20s. Yeah. People aren't just falling to random shit. And I'm living good. Like, we're all enjoying ourselves. It's the Hollywood Bowl. It's the reunification of Black Star on the stage together. This is the last night. Everything's gone well. And we're just waiting for the crowning moment. And in that moment, to be reminded of how fragile life is, how much you can be thinking about everything coming up roses and forget that life lingers, danger lingers, like nothing is promised. Tomorrow's not promised. Today's not promised. And that brought me back to a space that I hadn't been in a long time and reminded me of how many things are easily taken for granted, especially later in life when you feel like you're past the turmoil. And even in the moment, I was reflective. It was a beat. And I can't ever lose that. It was a gift in a way because he wasn't seriously harmed. Thank God, if it was assassination attempt, it failed. And it taught us, I hope, certainly me, all a lesson. We can't get lax. We can't take for granted any of this stuff. Yeah. And so, you know, and like everybody, like you think of how you could have stopped it and what could have been done before. And, you know, you are grateful for what didn't happen. But the message and the moment for me was like, don't ever forget it can happen. And no matter what you do before or how much precaution you take, you are not in control of every event. You can't stop everything. And something random like this person who we don't know, nobody's heard of, slips into a show with a ridiculous weapon, somehow makes it through 3 barriers and onto the stage with all that security, all the homies around, all these celebrities around at the Hollywood Bowl of all places. Well, anything can happen to anybody anywhere, right? So instead of focusing my anger towards this individual who's clearly batshit crazy, or instead of making it a moment that I brood about, like what I could have done, I just take the lesson and remind myself I'm grateful to have Kweli today. And I don't know if this will be the last time we talk, God forbid, but if it is, I want to make sure that I give all of myself to this moment with you because I'm not in control. And if I see you tomorrow, man, I'll be grateful for that.
Yes, indeed.
And that goes for everybody I love. And some people I don't even like that much, but boy, I don't want to lose them.
Word up.
For those who watch the show, I love saying, to this day. I didn't know that I could get sued for saying it until Talib told me.
I told her not to say it.
He told me not to say
He's
it.
trying to stop you from like offering more trauma to me. It's early in the show. You know what I mean? Like every single day of my life,
You get that.
Someone shouts that, and,
Yeah.
you know, and then you find out it's a friend. Like before the show, we were friends, and now you're bullying me.
Well, you know what? If we're not friends, I'm glad I got the footage before the interview started, so we're good. Till This Day started out as a boxing traveling show, but then the pandemic hit. So can you talk to us about the pivot and what do you see as the point of the show now?
Well, as 2020 hit everybody different, we, Talib Kweli, myself, many other incredible artists, in fact, found ourselves welcomed to Yellow Springs, Ohio, to figure a way through the pandemic. I had a show that we had just signed and agreed to do a mere few weeks, not even a few weeks, probably the first week of March. So by, third week of March, they're canceling NBA games. I was headed to New York to sit in on an XM show because the host was sick. These guys have had me on the show many times. I got a great boxing show on XM. This is the kind of thing I want to do. I see this as a great opportunity for a whole week. Let's go. And then I get to LA and they end up canceling that shoot. I'm furious. I'm like, man, come on. Like, I didn't even have to come back to LA. I could be in New York right now. And as that day progressed, it was the first time I was like becoming aware even of COVID or things like, it's something that's happening in the background, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not paying attention to it. And then so the NBA getting canceled is when most people I know was like, oh, wait, what is happening? Point. Right. Yeah. Okay, so I wasn't just going to New York for the XM show. That was a great opportunity during a fight week. Even the best time to be on a boxing show. But the fight that was happening that coming Saturday was in jeopardy. And then that same night, that fight got canceled. I'm like, well, that's my budget to go to LA. To go to New York. So, I don't know. And then there was another fight the next week, also in New York. This thing was set up nice. That fight's in jeopardy. Now can I go to New York on my own dime, spend hotel money, all this, just to sit in this seat? Next thing you know, the whole studio is like, well, hold on, we're not doing anything. We're like in a holding pattern, and I gave up the seat reluctantly. But I just didn't have the bread to make that fiscally responsible. There was no fight now. I can't do it. Let me tell you, Kweli, if I had gone straight to New York or even just hopped the plane just to get on that XM show, I would have been in the city in the main thrust of COVID. That is when everything happened. So because I'm on the road so much, week to week, it was just turned out to be a blessing. I happened to be home when shit shut down because I could have got stuck anywhere. Most likely New York, which would have been awful. Because remember they shut flights down? People got stuck.
I was stuck in LA.
York.
I was stuck in LA.
Are you really stuck in LA?
I mean, I was living a good life comparatively to how most people were living at the time, but I wasn't around my family.
Right.
And I definitely felt stuck. I definitely felt like you can't go nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what would have happened. You know what I mean? If
I had been stuck in New York, that would have been way better for me.
Because your family.
You know what I'm saying? I would have had a support system. A place I'm already spending money on already. I'm staying in hotels in LA, and I was finding a way. You know what I'm saying? But
I'll tell you, I'm something of a conspiracy theory guy. The government's telling me something, I'm not gonna just believe that off the rip. So I'd have probably been one of the worst dudes in New York. You got to convince me this is some real shit.
Even walking around super spreading everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I say all of that to say that this is also when my show is about to start development. Now, the concept is done, right? This show follows me around the world as I cover boxing week to week. I do a certain number of sit-down interviews and then a weekly digest. Well, as these fights start getting canceled and flights start getting canceled and opportunities to travel, much less cover a sport that's now not even in the ring, falls apart, I got to figure out what to do. So I just let it sit on the shelf. And also remember, it's supposed to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month tops, everything's gonna be back. So, okay, another week passed, things only get more shut down, and this thing is just kind of on the shelf. And it's a tough time because a show like that, I saw as an opportunity to level up. Like, I've been doing this a long time. I had a great concept that was totally dependent on the lifestyle I had then. And now my lifestyle has completely changed, and I don't know what to do with this show, and they're not giving me the money to not do the show.
Right.
So by the time I get to Yellow Springs, it's like, are we just going to wait out COVID and try to do it whenever boxing comes back? Or am I going to have to figure out a way to either cover boxing, which seems impossible, or figure out what it is about boxing that makes me go from city to city, state to state, country to country, shoestring budgets for all these years to cover this sport. And so I chose the latter because the former didn't have any roads to nowhere. It took me a while. It wasn't like this was an overnight epiphany. And what I realized is, the thing that makes my interviews unique, I believe, or what people see in them that they may not see in others, is I'm not just, when I speak to a fighter, speaking about the opponent across the ring and setting the stage of the athletic competition. That's absolutely in there. But because I've been in the sport so long and I personally train, and there's something about me that I feel like I need to fight every day, I get into the fight that brought them to the ring in the first place. The thing that you have to conquer before you even climb through the ropes, to get the amount of courage to face another opponent, because there are two opponents for every boxer in the ring. The guy you're facing and yourself.
Right.
So I don't have the opportunity to talk to anybody about the guy they're facing because nobody's facing anybody.
Right.
But the guy that had to get through those ropes in the first place, well, that guy exists in everybody, right? The guy that had to get on the stage in the first place, the guy who had to get in the studio and record an album and have the courage to put it out in the first place, you had to conquer something to do that. You had to overcome some kind of fear, some kind of adversity internally to stopping yourself. Well, in Yellow Springs, I had the incredible good fortune that my best friend is a magnet for all these incredible, talented, accomplished, top of their field artists.
Right.
And over the years, I've made my own friends. I've made friends of his friends, and we're all there together. So when I started looking at my friends and his friends as fighters and not just rappers, movie stars, I thought, let me explore the fight in them. And that was the first time in my whole life I realized that you don't have to be a boxer to be a fighter. And every fighter is not a boxer.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm covering the fight, not just boxing.
Yeah.
And so this gave me an opportunity to speak to people who I thought I knew, and who these people are mostly wildly famous already, so we all think we know them. And I have a personal relationship with them. And even I, with sometimes many years of a personal relationship, learn things about my friends, intimate things that make them tick that not only did I never know, but never even knew to ask.
Yeah.
And so it was a journey for them. It was a journey for me. I think the greatest reward I got was when people talked about how much they felt rewarded by it. They were exploring parts of their own psyche and their own journey that they hadn't thought about, hadn't really investigated, if ever, in some time. And we were all kind of going through this therapeutic moment. The world was shut down. What are we going to be on the other side of this? When was the last time you had to reflect on who you've been for the last 20 years? Who among us who is driven this way like you are, take the time for a month, not a day, not a week, a month to shut everything down and think about who the fuck you really are.
Yeah.
Everybody was going through that. And in that moment, I talked to these people about that. And that's what Till This Day became.
Yeah, that's some good fortune right there, and some good karma. For me personally, I'm new to the journalist space. So what you just described, the feeling of getting somebody to feel that way is Man, it feels great. It feels amazing.
It's like asking for seconds after you just cooked.
Yeah. Yeah. Your interview with Claressa Shields is, I think, brilliant because I met her through you in Yellow Springs. She was one of those people who, and I believe you helped to attract her.
Oh, I invited her. Yeah,
Yeah.
she wouldn't have been there without me. Sure.
Yeah. She, I didn't know anything about her before then because I'm not, full disclosure, I don't follow boxing like that. I love and appreciate it as a sport. I follow pop culture in general, so I know who rises to the top of their respective fields. But I don't know the inner workings of boxing. I've watched fights with my father. I remember watching, back in the days, Sugar Ray Leonard fights and certain, the HBO fights back in the days. I'm from Brooklyn. So, the Tyson era just for me is like, that's just Brooklyn shit to me. It's not boxing. You know what I'm saying? But,
Right.
But Claressa Shields, your interview with her, it got really personal, got really deep. But I also heard you and Joe Rogan talking about women's boxing and how you see it currently. You said Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano.
That's right.
Was fight of the year so far.
I mean, that was in May, right? That was the first week of May. I did Joe Rogan. So let me be fair. I think it holds up. I think, obviously Canelo losing to Bivol is upset of the year, but I don't know if that was as exciting a fight as Taylor Serrano. And before I move even to that, let me give you the setup for this Claressa Shields interview. Because as you know, as we are likened to do in Yellow Springs, I had a hell of a shack night the night before. And so I found myself getting back to my place at some 5 a.m. And I'm doing this interview the day she's leaving. Oh. Right? So she's got like 11 o'clock. She need to hit the road back to, Detroit, Flint. And we got a 7 o'clock start.
Yeah, you said that too when you let her know off top. Which is one of the things I appreciated about the intervw. Like you started the interview like, look, I got to bed at 5 a.m., so...
You'll see what it do.
That's how you started the interview. I was like, okay.
I got to the house at 5, and I was like, okay, I could cancel this interview because I've talked to her so many times. This series isn't really about boxers. I'm worried that I'm going to end up with a 2-3 hour boxing interview. And I'm dog tired now. It's, 5 a.m. and in 2 hours, I know, as you do, know what kind of energy it takes to do this well.
Yeah.
But she's a fighter. And for me to quit the interview would be like me quitting in the ring. It'd be like a no mas moment.
Absolutely.
She would never let me hear the end of it. And I promise you, that's the reason that interview took place, because I couldn't let her talk shit about how I couldn't make it to the interview for the rest of my life.
Okay.
Right? So I had to figure out how I'm going to get this done. I stayed in my clothes, laid on top of the bed.
So smart.
And had an alarm. You know how, you see the memes when people have the Apple alarm going off every 15 minutes?
Yeah.
I did it. Because I can't go too deep into sleep, because it's not like I was just out till 5. I was out till 5.
Right.
You understand?
I was out with you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I hit the spot. I'm there on time, and she sits down. Kweli, it's my favorite interview of this series. Like,
it's really good.
It was nothing like what I was worried it would be. And from the moment we started, I was full of energy because she was full of so much energy. I got it from her. And we went on this journey of somebody, like I said, that I thought I knew, somebody who I've talked to countless times, the only person in this season who is a boxer by profession. You would think it would be the most covered topics rehashed. Didn't really touch on anything that we talked about before. And I think we both walked away from that interview like, man, we just went through something together. And before then or since then, I don't think there's a better representation of who that woman is at her core than that conversation. And so what I like to believe is that I, in the moment, recognize when there's a lesson to be learned.
Right.
And for me, it was that. Don't sell yourself short, first of all, and assume that because you're worried it'll be this, that it can't be something else. And if you stay out till 5 a.m., make the 7 o'clock call.
Right.
Like, if it had been somebody else, I may not have respected the competition and the spirit of the fighter enough to actually go. Yeah. But it's that boxer in me. It's that the thing that people have to overcome themselves. You know what? While I was finding her fight, I won one of my own.
Right.
I got there and did the thing.
Man, working through a hangover is like the biggest accomplishment. It really is.
Well, part of it was I wasn't hungover because I never actually got any good sleep.
Right.
I was just rocking with it. I was a runaway train, and I'm just glad that she laid really good tracks.
Word up. Shout out to Claressa Shields.
Shout out to Claressa Shields. I have to say, the biggest fight of her life is happening overseas in England. She's fighting Savannah Marshall, and that fight, I think, will propel her to household name status. So this is a tremendous year for women's boxing. She is a pioneer of women's boxing who, as much visibility as she gets, doesn't get enough. And I want to reiterate that because at every time we talk about this sport, and her in particular, I've learned that you have to remind people of who the real pioneers and champions are. Like, this woman won a gold medal the first time they ever had women's boxing in the Olympics, then came back and did it again, and then entered the professional realm and has been dominating since. Had the nerve to go to, MMA fighting and won a fight there even.
Yeah.
So as women's boxing continues to make more money, get more visibility, we can never forget how these things really became an opportunity for women to make money and to be visible. She'll always have that as a feather in her cap, and we got to acknowledge her for that. So shout out to Claressa Shields.
Shout out to Claressa. So, like I said, I'm a Brooklyn dude, and we love Mike Tyson. Recently, Mike Tyson, I'm not going to say recently because it's almost like he always has these like resurgences every couple of years where people remember what Mike Tyson is and what he represents. Recently, he was on Drink Champs, and he said, I don't want to be great. I know a lot of great people, but they're not good people. I want to be a good person. It's one of the most profound things I've ever heard. And Mike Tyson has been saying profound things for a long time. Talk to us a little bit about your view on Tyson's evolution as a man, as a human being, and how important he is not just to boxing, but to our culture in general.
Tyson is a career and a human that spans my awareness of boxing in an interesting way. His heyday, I'm obviously still a very young person. I'm still understanding what this sport has connected to social interaction between races, socioeconomic levels, nations. And Mike Tyson is this odd, through line. He's not great like Muhammad Ali, because when I say great, I mean he transcended the sport in a way that it isn't about his boxing record. It isn't about his proficiency as a fighter. It's about what he used that platform to become, which was a great man, a great example, a great individual who can't be really pigeonholed as any one thing, right? And so people all over the world look at Muhammad Ali and see something good. Nobody's 100% good, but everybody around the world can find something good in this guy. Mike Tyson, I'm a child, metabolizing what this person is. And people forget that when he started out, he wasn't Monster Mike.
Right.
They were putting him forward like the gentle giant. He had the squeaky voice. Yeah. He was funny and kind of awkward. And he was really
very
harmless.
Young. He was so young.
So young, harmless. And then he became this thing in the ring that was just insurmountable. And so as a kid, I saw that. And then I saw him on the cover with Robin Givens, and I watched them vilify her, right? And then I saw him become her victim. I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm saying as a kid, watching this black kind of superhero go through all these levels of portrayal by a mass media, but without understanding necessarily what benefit it is to the media or the promoters or whatever sponsorship may be in place or whatever, money seekers that he has around him, why it is necessary for him to be viewed this way at this time, this way at that time, this way at another time. So in a way, Mike Tyson transcends boxing for me, not in the way that Muhammad Ali does, in the sense that, everybody finds something good in him, but I think his journey, we can all relate to some point in his story. He's uniquely human, and he's presented to everybody at any phase as something other than human. He's either an animal or he's a baby. He's either, a mastermind in the ring or he's an idiot. You talk about his speech as though he has a terrible speech impediment, or you hold him accountable for every word he says in the throes of a fight like he's some kind of philosopher spouting, a reasoned position. They make Mike Tyson what they want him to be at any given time. And I think at some point in his life, we've all been that guy.
Yeah.
And so I think it's been unfair, the journey he's taken, but also it's been really illuminating for people who watch it. And now that he has found peace, most of the time, this guy's not peaceful all the time, he's still got a fight inside him like we all do. And I think his fight is for peace, for calm, for understanding. So when you hear him with all these bars, and he does have them, I think that's him working out his shit in real time in front of people, which is a blessing for us to watch. When he decided to re-enter the ring for the Roy Jones exhibition, I was 100% against it.
I remember.
I love Roy Jones, love Mike Tyson. I thought this really was offensive to me. Not that they weren't in on it. Of course, they wanted to do it. I'm not here to tell a man winning how he can get his own money. But as a fight fan, as someone who watched this man's life progress, the idea that we would sanction as fans the risk to losing him or losing that bit of ability to reflect his faculties, to become an old man and watch and listen to those bars, one punch taken by a young man can wipe all that away. I mean, he's an old man. Taking a shot from anybody can scramble those eggs. And what did we get? If either Roy Jones, who is a boxing mastermind, this guy's a genius. He hasn't found really an outlet or a consistent platform like Mike Tyson has to impart his wisdom on a regular basis. But if and when he does, I'm telling you, he is a treasure chest.
They must have
of
forgot
boxing wisdom. You know what I'm saying? Don't let him forget. And I want to make sure that he has an opportunity to do that, because I've, again, spoken to him, of course, multiple times, and the man's a genius in the sport. Mike Tyson, we can't afford to lose the opportunity to listen to him grow old. And so I thought, come on, guys. They're worth so much more than whatever we'll get out of watching them physically battle. I'd rather watch them debate than watch them fight. And so as fight fans and as humans, I wish that we had elevated to a level to say something like that.
Right.
Take the ropes down, sit in the ring and have a conversation. I'll pay-per-view that all day.
Yeah, I don't want to be an ageist or anything, but I feel like at some age you probably should stop boxing, right?
I mean, yeah, the problem is the should. You know what I mean? Telling a guy what he can and can't do in his life. Yeah.
No, hold on. That's a false equivalency.
I didn't mean that.
She said same with the rappers.
No.
See, now that's a false equivalency. There's no brain damage that comes from writing rap songs.
Okay, I didn't mean to throw that shade. It just reminded me because we were just talking about it before.
Reminded you of what?
I didn't.
I think the onus is on the audience to decide what we should consume.
Right.
If there's no audience for a Mike Tyson Roy Jones boxing match, Mike Tyson Roy Jones boxing match doesn't happen. I mean, I know this, is high-minded and probably is not a universal opinion that we'd rather listen to them debate than fight.
I agree with that, but I might be in the minority.
I'm certain I'm in the minority, but I'm saying that as we evolve, I believe that is something that we should demand and we shouldn't sanction.
Hey, let's start right now.
To telling
Well,
Mike
I'm
Tyson
definitely not going to be watching
fight.
Mike Tyson, Roy Jones, let's see the debate.
Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean?
I'll be the Don King of debates.
There it is. There it is.
And just to be clear, I meant rapper beef.
Oh, yeah.
So
That was a good save.
A couple minutes later, yeah.
But I mean, what's better than like a seasoned rapper with a diss track? Like, come
I
on.
don't want it.
I'm a seasoned
It's a
rapper. I wrote
spoken
a
word
diss
at that
track.
point.
I wrote a diss track for someone who deserved to be dissed. And it was really good.
Yeah, of course, because you know what you're doing.
And my friends convinced me to not put it out.
Oh, okay.
They were like,
so,
Which friends? Because I know
They
your
were
friends,
good
and I
friends.
can't see any of them.
They're good friends. They were like, you don't need to be doing this to him.
I disagree.
I want to talk about the relationship between the boxer and the manager. There was an era of boxing in which elderly white managers had all their hopes and dreams riding on a fighter, and often a black fighter. So in your opinion, is the fighter-manager relationship based in exploitation, or can it be truly symbolic?
Oh, of course. Of course, there can be a truly, if I understand your question, if there can be an honest manager-boxer relationship, one where the manager is looking out for the fighter's best interest.
Rather than just trying to get paid.
I mean, sure, there absolutely can be. It is often a competing of incentives, right? A fighter has a limited time where he has earning potential. A manager,
Unlike a rapper. We make that clear.
the manager and the boxer relationship is wrought with incentives that are against the boxer's best interest, because when the fighter begins, middle, and ends his career, most cases, the manager is still there. And if a manager has all his eggs in one basket, meaning he's only managing one fighter and lives and dies with that fighter, well, he's a fool, because you can manage multiple boxers. And not unlike, talent managers and managers in probably every genre of entertainment, you are going to run up against guys who are looking to package their fighters, package their rappers, package their actors in situations that are most advantageous for the manager's relationship that has to be ongoing with the network, with the promoter, with even the ticket buyer. And so if you as a fighter are unaware or uneducated on how the business of boxing works, and you take everything your manager says as whole cloth and in your best interest, then once you become educated, which happens through experience, when it's way too late to guide your own career, because by the time you get the experience, all that's in the rearview mirror and you're putting things together, you feel that you've been used, or you feel that you didn't get what you should have got, or why'd you put me in that fight when you could have put me in that fight? You told me this was the best fight for me, but now I see that you were actually trying to manage that guy too, and if I lose that fight, then you have him and you can't lose, but I should have fought over here where I can't lose. You know what I mean? And these things happen frequently, but there's a flip side to that coin. Fighters are poor, and they
Poor man's
don't
sport.
have money often to train and work, and boxing ain't no part-time job. So if someone's gonna pay you to train and not work, well, then who's paying your rent? Boxers have girlfriends. Boxers have babies. Boxers have needs. And so who's paying for all of that? And so if a manager sees a guy who's young, a prospect, who he potentially can make money off of, he has to invest early and often. And so by the time that fighter actually starts making money, in the manager's mind, I'm $300K in, and you just got your first check for $100K. So what do you really owe me? $10,000? Or if you rock with me and you start paying me back faster because I can put you in this situation, I can get you that deal that benefits me, maybe I'm still only getting 10% from you, then the manager rationalizes it like, I gotta make my money back. And at any point, just like they do with their trainers, a fighter can be like, I don't want this manager anymore. I'm now a box office draw. I'm a pay-per-view fighter. This manager isn't a big hitter. I want somebody who has more power. So what do you do as a manager? Do you just trust that this guy is going to show you the loyalty on the back end of his career? If he even has a career that does pay that way, because most fighters don't. Most fighters never get those big paydays. You're gambling as a manager. So who's really, you know what I'm saying? Who's cheating who becomes the constant question. How much did I put in? How much did I make back? Is me putting you in a situation that benefits us both somehow me disrespecting or cheating you because I didn't put you in a situation that only benefits you?
It reminds me of the story you told me about your interview with Don King.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And what he said to you.
You're right. And so, Don is not a manager. He's a promoter. But because of his antics, they had to, create the Ali act because a lot of guys were managing and promoting the same fighters, double dipping so they could get that money back faster and have complete control over the fighter's career, right? Like the manager is supposed to be negotiating with the promoter in your best interest so that you have some say-so in what happens. Don King, I'm trying to tell you, he is not the model that you would want as someone who would guide your career if loyalty and transparency is what you're looking for. But he would arguably be right if he said, if it's money you're looking for,
I got it.
Find a better game in town than me. I dare you, right? So when this Mike Tyson, coming back to Mike, and another kind of tent pole in the way I view a fighter's trajectory in his career and relationship to the sport and business, was suing Don King. And it was like one of those moments, like you say, Mike Tyson always comes back to relevance. Well, this was when he came back to relevance because what Don King had been doing financially to Mike Tyson became public news, front page news, and nobody that read that could justify it. So I'm early in the game. I'm young in the game. And this is kind of like my first time I could talk to Don King in a situation where he brings the press to Morton's Steakhouse in LA, in Beverly Hills, which is, for a, 19, 20-some kid, that's a good meal. This is where ballers go.
Steak and lobsters?
Order anything you like. You know what I mean? Which is part of Don's, soft hand. He's bribing you. And he's promoting a fight, and this is on the front pages. So these are seasoned
That's
journalists.
how the mob used to do it, too, with
Get you a steak and lobster.
Oh, yeah.
Get you some steak. What's your wife? What she like? What's your wife like? What's your wife like?
Yeah. It's that. So, older journalists, seasoned guys, they know the game. They want to get invited back to the next Morton's Steakhouse dinner on La Cienega in Beverly Hills. So they're going to ask the questions about the fight he wants to talk about and stay in good favor because, what they know, that I don't know, is that there's no real payoff in being the guy that says the thing that your promoter doesn't want to talk about. Like, there's some journalistic integrity in it, but boy, nobody's paying for that. And so I was personally upset though. I was like, I thought somebody else was going to do it. It wasn't my plan. But once I realized, well, no one's going to say anything, I hit Don King with the, Mike Tyson said this and that, and you did this and that, and how do you justify these things? Mike had already signed another promoter. He was coming back for a fight, right? He said, Mike Tyson was with me. He made $20 million a fight, and now he's fighting for 5. Now, I might have stole half, but would you rather half your 20 or all of your 5?
Well,
that's a serious question to ask somebody.
it is a very serious question.
Shout out to Mike Tyson.
Shout out to Mike Tyson.
American hero.
And you know what? Shout out to Don King.
Shout out to Don King.
Because
made in America.
That's right.
Well,
For all he did, when he was doing it, nobody did it better.
So essentially he was doing kickbacks Or getting kickback because he was.
I can't get into the weeds of how he was siphoning money, but he was figuring out how to make every single red cent on every fighter he had. And he was also making more money for the fighters than they were going to be able to make without him. So that is a real question. Do you want half your 20 or all your 5?
Have you ever seen anything at your level that made you feel like perhaps you were watching a fixed fight?
Fixed is a real toxic word.
I think toxic is a toxic word.
Take the toxic off and tell the story.
Because fixed implies that
okay.
the fighter has a predisposed notion of what this fight is going to be in the end and is playing a role to that end. That I can't accuse anyone of without having some factual basis on which to go. What I have seen, though, is a guy who just showed up to get paid. A guy who knows he's not good enough or didn't train hard enough or isn't skilled enough to win this fight. So he takes it anyway because the payday is there. Mm-hmm. I've seen a guy cheat himself. And I'll give you an example. I'm not going to completely, dance around your question. I'll give you Mike Alvarado in the third fight with Brandon Rios. The first fight being one of the best fights I've ever seen live. It's not, people don't put it in the upper echelons of greatest fights of all time, but boy, if you were at Staples Center that night and you like a slugfest with nobody backing down until somebody falls, that's the fight for you. Like, revisit Brandon Rios, Mike Alvarado 1. Crazy. And that also was the fight that made StubHub like hallowed ground for wars. After that fight, there were many wars there that, held up to that kind of standard. But by the time the third one rolled around, it was in Denver, and Alvarado, for whatever he was going through in his life or whatever mental challenges he might have been faced with, just secretly didn't fucking train. And nobody really knew that. Like, we who are in the sport are like, no, we're not seeing nobody talking about Mike in the gym, whatever. But the first two fights, the first fight was incredible. Second fight, great. So we're like, we got, third fight is going to be a beast. Mm-hmm. And he had a media day. And for those who are interested, you can go find it. And he showed up, and what happens in a media day, it's like when you see old shots of Ali hitting the bag and dancing around, talking shit and all this. Well, that's a media day. Mm-hmm. This is when you see the fighter and what he is supposed to be in condition for the very imminent upcoming fight, which is usually no more than a week out or two. And when he showed up at that media workout, everybody was like, oh, yo, this guy's not even close to ready. Like, he showed up in street clothes. He got winded, like shadow boxing. We were like, well, what is it? But he's still talking to talk, like, Okay. And then when he got in there, he got completely demolished. Mm-hmm. And so that was a payday for him, money he could get, but he cheated himself. He cheated the fans. He cheated the legacy of that fight series. If I had it like that, I'd have paid that guy to not fight just so it wouldn't mar the Brandon Rios, Mike Alvarado fight series. And I think, he'd tell you the same himself. Like, I think that's probably a regret he has.
Now, Radio, you and I, we're good friends. And what I like what you had to say about your pivot on To This Day, because you said you were doing fighters and then you wanted to see the fight inside of just people who are not boxers. That's the same. I'm learning how to be a journalist, and I'm understanding how that's attractive. And I heard you say on other programs, you talk, not a lot, but you talk about how your father was murdered when you were 2 years old. And I want to know what that impact was like on you, because that's something that I can't imagine. and what it was like on your mother, who had to do a lot of things on her own.
It's not an unusual question, but what people often overlook is I can't imagine it either. I was 2. What do I know? It's not like I remember.
Right.
You know, I mean, I believe it was a blessing that I wasn't 12.
Heard.
That, I could answer your question more fully. But what I experienced was an unusual set of circumstances. Even though, not having a father in the home isn't so uncommon, although it's not as common as I think people would have you believe in the Black community. Like, daddies be at home, you know?
Yeah, the CDC report says that Black fathers are in the household more than any demographic. The problem is that people are looking at marriage as being fatherhood. But when you look at the time that Black fathers are spending with their children, on average, Black fathers are spending more time with their children.
And that is an excellent point, because that's exactly what I mean by you would have the concept that all these Black kids and boys especially grew up without their daddies. This is just a thing we do. This is bullshit. Like, most of my peers, fathers were somewhere. They may not have been in the home, but they was in the home.
Right.
You know, they could go to their home.
Right. There was a
They
home.
would occasionally come to mama's home.
Yay, 2
And,
Christmases.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, for whatever that relationship was between mother and father, father was accessible, is my point. For that not to be the case with me, and for it not to be something that the father chose, it's not like he, just abandoned the house. It was unique, and everybody had a reaction to that. Like, most of it is sympathy, like, oh. But because I was not the kind of kid that wanted that style of attention, it was more annoying to me. You know what I mean? And there were even times when I would try to make light of it just to make other people feel comfortable about it. But it wasn't a sense of trauma in that I lost something that I had. But it did inform me that you could lose something completely out of your control before you're even aware of it. Like, the fact that life ends and awareness of mortality is something that I was aware of, I think, before any kid would naturally be. Right? My mother was not shy about or didn't give me a song and dance story. And because my father was well known, all of her friends knew him. Like, I didn't have some rose-colored glasses about life or some, daddy's working on a farm in heaven kind of bullshit. We was dealing with what it really is.
Right.
And so I think that is part of what makes me, even to this day, deal with and be interested in what it really is.
Yeah. And this is in the Bay Area. You represent the Bay Area. Wherever you go. Your godfather trained you and Bokeem Woodbine, who's somebody I knew coming up, while y'all were drunk after the club to create like actual fight scenarios. Is this true?
Yo, like I said, I've never had the notion that I would be a competitive athlete as a profession, but I've trained boxing as a sport and a passion, and I would be drunk and high, and Bokeem would be drunk and high and on beaties.
Fucking beaties, man.
Wait, what do you mean on beaties? Am I thinking
that was
something
like
else
when
than what it
Beaties-
was?
That's when beaties was popping. I didn't know.
Beaties, if you smoke
It's a
them,
little
you
small,
get
little-
you get a head rush.
Okay, so it's not a drug, because you making it seem like
mean,
it's something you
tobacco's a
popped or
drug.
something.
No.
It was just like you got to remind them this isn't a blunt, so they don't.
No, but it's a hard hit. Like, it's a head
Yeah.
rush, and it's a
I can see
nauseous,
somebody being on beaties.
you got
and
to, okay.
eventually it's addictive. Like, this is a sidetrack, but it's funny how nothing that gets you high is good at first. Like, alcohol doesn't taste good. Even weed smoke doesn't just go down smooth.
Wait.
Beaties do not give you a good feeling initially. Like, everything you have to push through.
Beaties never gave you a good feeling, though, ever. That's the problem.
But I couldn't figure out how people, like, he smoke them all the time, man. And, probably one of the worst things for your lungs with these beaties and cloves and all this shit. But with that
for
said,
sure.
we were putting ourselves really behind the 8 ball. You know what I mean? And the reasoning behind that was, well, Bokeem Woodbine is never going to be a boxer. It's a working actor. I'm certainly never going to be a boxer. And we hung out night after night after night. My godfather's his trainer. So we trained together. Best friends, we're like thick as thieves. And the only time we're going to end up needing these skills is when we're fucked up. Like, we're not crazy people. We're not involved in crime or like we're not mugging people in the street. So when if we're in our sound minds, what are the chances we're going to end up in fisticuffs? But if at the end of the night, at the bar, hanging out and you're high and somebody, decides to get froggy, you got to be able to, leap.
Got to be able to leap.
And so that was the theory behind it.
That's hilarious to me. I'm sorry. It's hilarious. It's logical. It is. It's logical.
But let me tell you what, Dana Bratton is a genius, right? And he's not one who is one for the spotlight. So I've mentioned it before, and now when people ask me about it, and I'm certain he's irritated by that.
Right.
And he's one of these people that don't want to be talked about. But he's also, has got a crazy legacy that we're going to have to just talk about him, even though he doesn't want to be talked about.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because he's done so much for so many. And what he did for me in putting me in those situations on a regular basis, it wasn't that just I was able to perform this physical task and execute well, even though I had inebriation on the brain. It allowed me to focus my mind intentionally. It allowed me to take control of my faculties even when they were inebriated. And the ability to focus your mind because you decide to, that's a muscle you got to develop. And so for all the physical, outwardly muscles I was gaining by doing that, nothing compared to the mental dexterity and muscle that he helped me build by forcing me to do that.
Yeah, you speak about the finite nature of boxing. You describe it as a game of millimeters. This is what this sounds like to me, what you're saying.
I think life is a game of millimeters, which is why it's so analogous to boxing for me. So yes, absolutely. You've seen Floyd dip back from a punch, leather on the glove, just barely graze the tip of his nose, and then he leaned forward with the counter shot and stop a guy. That's life. That's boxing. You got to be able to know just how far you can go and when to come back.
Right. Now, you also spent some time working at Death Row Records, which I find interesting. Because I can't imagine... we haven't even really talked about this. I can't imagine what you would be doing at Death Row Records. So why don't you run that down for me?
Well, early in the game, as a young man, I am working on music videos. I was in a unique situation. I'll tell you more than what happened at Death Row Records, being that the music video game at the time was huge. Big budgets. Every single had to have a video. And the image portrayed in the video is what either sold or trashed the rapper. And I was so young coming to LA, and the guys who were on the front pages of rap, if you will, were the guys I was just listening to in high school. And my mother moved to Los Angeles before I did. I was still in high school when she moved here. But when I did move, ultimately she lived above a guy named Mike Lynn in an apartment building. He was our downstairs neighbor.
Okay.
That was a turning point in my life. This super cool dude is downstairs. I can escape my house, go downstairs, hang out with him. At the time when you're young, you don't know how young you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was really popular in high school. I was like, well, this, of course he wants. Who doesn't want to hang out with me? I'm,
right.
Radio Rahim. What was good? And so, Mike worked with Dr. Dre, and Mike really brought me into that sphere, into that world. And while I was, doing whatever I could do, PA and all this stuff, I can't thank him enough. This was I didn't realize at the time, but a mentor. He treated me like a big
That's
brother.
crazy. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. That is, if not for him, that whole side of life, I don't know how that would have happened for me. It was this guy lived downstairs, and so it's almost like a stupid '90s movie or something where the kid is in the same building as some cool guy, and he just keeps going to that guy's apartment. Yeah, that's what I was doing
every movie,
like all the time.
Right.
And so, that's how that started. And I don't think I have told that story before, but shout out to Mike Lynn.
Yeah.
Big influence in my life. And, the beginning of my relationship with rap in that way and production in that way. By the time I decided to be a camera operator, I had done many music videos, and that is how I became aware of what production and shooting film and shooting videos and commercials, rap videos. Mm-hmm. So even though I was never musically inclined as a performer, I had this connection to music and rap as a performance art in addition to music I just liked. Mm-hmm. I made that connection early in life, and I was working with guys that were just a few years prior iconic heroes. Mm-hmm. Like you had DJ Quick sitting in this seat like a few minutes ago, really. Mm-hmm. And I worked on his music videos. I reminded him of, like, I seen him, obviously. I came here early for two reasons. I want to watch you do your thing. Okay. Because you should know that you're good at this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you. Yes, thank you. Please, hold your applause.
What is that for? Wait, hold on. Is that for him or for me?
Yeah, that was a great question. That was a great compliment. They're applauding your compliment.
And I mean it. I've watched you like grow in this. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting for me to see where you take it. Because even the Midnight Miracle, I see you kind of as the moderator of the show. Yeah. Right? You keep the train on the track. Yeah. You make sure
you see I'm deliberate with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And necessary, boys. Yeah. Necessary. Right. So, I see you directing a conversation, and now you're hosting one. And it's enjoyable to, watch and to be here and talking to you. So you've mentioned, things I've said to other people, but it is also notable that I don't just talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a reason I'm here and excited to be here, because I respect you and we have a relationship of trust. And so I cannot just do a show, but I can talk to you, my friend, and learn and share. And so coming up with what would now be considered a mentor, but more just felt like a cool kind of big brother in Mike Lynn, I got a lens to see the world of entertainment, of production, of how money relates to production, relates to promotion, relates to music, relates to image, which could relate back to the way we spoke about Mike Tyson portraying an image and what is selling at what time. I'm now, as a big consumer of television when I was a kid, I'm a latchkey kid. My mom works all the time. I get home from school. It's just me. I love television. I love movies. This is not just my babysitter, but my friend. Right. So I have a wealth of knowledge about what is put forward as entertainment and what is really promoted to people and children image-wise. Watching the rap world at that time promote certain images and begin to understand who's being paid by that and who's producing for that gave me a very different perspective on what I had been consuming. When DJ Quick sat here and talked about him not wanting to be affiliated with this gang culture and, that was just guilt by association, I absolutely take him at his word. But let me tell you, in high school, we thought this nigga was banging. Right? Not only that, but just because of the culture of Oakland, we call each other blood. Mm-hmm. Nothing to do with gangs whatsoever. I believe that term came from the feeling of brotherhood. We're all blood.
From the 50s and 60s, they were saying that.
Right, but at this time, this Crip and Blood gang culture is being promoted. It's being put in the music either by the rapper or at least being rewarded by the record label so that the rapper wants to talk about it because this is what gets the record on the radio or gets him a music video for $500,000 or gets him signed in the first place. This gangbanging thing was big. Yeah. And we were associating that culture with our young lives.
Yeah.
And so watching this death row culture happen with, gang overtones, but, there's also people involved in it like me that aren't affiliated with gangs, learning gang culture, learning that gangsterism is like something to be proud of, something to associate with. And really, there's a sense of brotherhood, even as young Black artists come up. You have a Black executive producer, you have Black producers in the studio, you got Black rappers, they're hiring young Black kids to work on set. There's a sense of brotherhood. In my case, had nothing to do with any association with gangs. I've never been a gangster, but I did feel a sense of brotherhood with these people. I felt a sense of acceptance and I felt a sense of community. And the image put forward, well, that's a gang.
Yeah.
And learning the difference between what they want people to see and what is happening that they're actually looking at made me reflect, even in real time, on what I'm a part of. Can I be doing this that has nothing to do with that, knowing that what they're promoting it and portraying it as is toxic?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a struggle.
Now let's talk a little bit about you being triggered by Jasmin saying "to this day." Let's get into that a little bit. Now, Deontay Wilder, fighters are also trying to hype the fight. From what I'm not a boxing expert. For what I can see, everyone's in on, we got to hype this fight, right? And when you watch that again, he definitely had an agenda before you asked the question. He brought race up first, which I think is a point that's lost on many people. And he absolutely misunderstood your intent behind the question or what you were trying to do. You were trying to give him a layup. Later that day, y'all squashed the beef and people didn't really see that video. That video didn't go viral. He described boxing as an emotional sport in defense of himself. What was it like for you to be in that situation?
It was surprising how visceral people got after the fact. And it was disappointing how, even though the interview wasn't long, it was about 45 seconds longer. And boy, those are some crucial seconds that he decided to edit out of his Instagram post. So the idea that you get from the Instagram post is not a accurate account of the conversation.
Right.
And he did nothing to disamuse people of their
He just let us rock.
Yeah, he just let it ride. Okay, fine.
Now, hold on. Before you go on, I want to just remind you, and as I thought about it, and I forgot to think about this as I was preparing for this interview, but the way in which that was edited, I didn't know it was you. Which I think that was the case with most people. I was going around like, yo, did you see this Deontay Wilder video? To this day, and a matter of fact, it was you and me hanging out in the Chateau Marmont. And we were having dinner. And Dave was there, and there was a bunch of other people there. And I brought the video up, and I pulled it up on my phone. You remember this? I pulled it up on my phone. And I was like, yo, this Deontay Wilder video, you gotta see how he did this nigga. It's crazy. And you was like, that's me. Like, what you mean? You was like, let me show you the rest of the video.
Right.
And I was like, and he was like, peep how he says Radio Rahim. I'm like, that's you.
That's exactly how, when Talib told me, I was like, no, it's not.
So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stop your wisdom.
Yeah, no, it was a surprising amount of like real nasty pushback on that, because you're right. Most people didn't know it was me. Even though he said the name, he was in the middle of the rant. And what I realized, not immediately, but what I had to do was calm my mind in a moment where it was inebriated with hysteria. Not alcohol or weed, but panic and fear and like rage. Also, I was very angry that this, and all these things are happening in a moment when you realize what's happening. It's like you're watching a movie and, you know, in the tableau comes where shit starts to fall apart, and then it's just like, boom, boom. It's a whole series of bad things happening in this montage. Well, that's me looking at Instagram and Twitter, just ding, 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 fuck this guy, just sell out this Uncle Tom, this piece of shit. You look how he did this nigga. Like, people, some that I know, I'm like, that Talib Kweli. I'm like, what is happening?
Right.
And so I had to calm, like, okay, I'm gonna now let this ride. And one thing I can't put on him, because you said, that second video, a lot of people, that didn't go viral. A lot of people didn't see that. I shot them both on the same day.
Right.
I put the second video out a day later. I wanted to let this ride. What people were actually reacting to in the moment was they felt some relation to him saying, our people have been fighting for 400 years, which is what my question intended for him to expound on and make an issue of. Here's the rub. Boy, did it work. So do I stop that from happening because I had no anticipation that I would be the whipping post?
Right.
That would amplify this message?
Right.
Or do I let the amplified message be exactly what I was hoping it would be to a level that I never thought it might be if only I could take those slings and arrows a little bit longer?
Which is what you said in the follow-up video.
Wow.
You said something very important, and I'm paraphrasing, but you talked to him about fighters bringing their stories with them and their cultural experiences with them into the ring. And you said to him, I was trying to get you to expound upon that. And he said, when you said it the second time, I don't understand the question that you're asking me. But he said it in a way where it wasn't combative. Right. He wasn't trying to combat you or make you a whipping post in the follow-up video because he had calmed down. Right. I think, but that's why I mentioned in the first video, he was already in hype to fight mode. He was presenting himself as the opposition to the great white hype.
Right. And he also didn't understand what Tyson Fury was saying, which is part of the reason I raised the question, because it's an international fight. It's his first biggest globally attention-grabbing fight. Tyson Fury is a huge British fighter, a big fan base. Even before the fight, Tyson Fury brings a world of eyeballs that are not paying attention to Deontay Wilder before. Deontay Wilder brings to the table a collection of eyeballs who share his experience, who know what he's talking about, but might not know what Tyson Fury's talking about either. So on the one side, these guys are misunderstanding each other. So the reason I posed that question was so that both sides might have some clarity. I saw a real cultural moment on the horizon, like right there on the cusp. I'm like, oh, nobody caught that.
Right.
Tyson Fury said, I'm come from a fighting people. My people have been fighting for 200 years. He's talking about the Furies.
Yeah.
He means he's a gypsy. Gypsies are fighting people. He's a fighting man. His father before him was a fighter. His father before him was a fighter. And his father before him was a fighter. Like in the movie Snatch, you know, the Brad Pitt type of character.
You like dogs.
Oh, yeah. You like dogs. Like dogs. It's that. And I would think that most people that were there for Deontay Wilder would be like,
new trailer
what?
for me, ma. Give me a new trailer for me, ma. I'm sorry.
They would be like I was in this moment. Like, what?
Yeah.
So he said in response to Fury saying he's been fighting for 200 years as the Furies, as literally bare knuckle brawling for 200 years. 200 years? It's a what? My people, now he's talking about all black people, not the Wilders, have been fighting in America for 400 years.
Right.
They're talking past each other. Two totally different things are being put forward as their shield of valor. So what I knew for a fact is that everybody who heard Wilder say that wasn't gonna make that connection. And a lot of people who heard Fury say that doesn't know what he's talking about. Tell him what you're talking about.
See, look at you trying to be mediator, trying to make everybody happy.
Took it on the chin.
Nice guys
For the
finished
greater
last,
good.
Radio Rahim.
Yeah, you know what? But I would rather be a good man that's great than
That's
just
right.
Than just
there
the
we go.
great.
See, and that's a callback, which you've learned from hanging out with comedians. Now, you and I have both been canceled on the internet over misunderstandings.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? My situation is slightly different than yours, but this is based, you're clearly a person who was raised in an anti-racist, pro-black environment. You clearly know history. You clearly understand on the right side of history when it comes to being progressive and all this. Clearly, in my estimation, I think just as facts, you were trying to get Deontay to expound on exactly what he expounded on. But you became the victim of what he was trying to expound on. People called you a coon over this. You got death threats over this. These are things that have happened to me as well. So what for you are the real life effects of people assuming the worst about your character on the internet?
This is yet another example for me of something I learned earlier in life. That moment of calm, that moment of let this thing ride, that didn't just come in that moment. It came from understanding that all energy has the ability to be turned in any direction depending on the vessel. That's negative energy, this so-called cancel culture, if that's what we're calling it. This hatred that can be filling up your inbox and your comment section and sometimes even on the street and confront you in real life. It's just energy. People are trying to metabolize you. They're trying to figure out how you become a part of their life and understanding of the world. Nobody actually cares about you. Nobody cares about me. So much so that they could have this high level energy or reaction to what I'm doing that has literally nothing to do with them unless they engage it. Right? People like at that level of engagement in your journey are doing something that has to do with their own journey. I don't have to play my part in their story the way they wrote it. I don't have to accept and metabolize the energy they put out and make that part of my story. So this isn't the first time I've been called a coon or an Uncle Tom or the old shit used to be Oreo. I would be called that just because I speak well in a black community. Just because I listen to rock and roll before I listen to rap.
You do. I noticed your ringtone.
What is it?
I mean, as a
You're
child,
the best.
well, that's the Karate Kid, theme song. And it's true, you know what I mean? It's like hard to not have that as my ringtone. I mean, nothing's ever going to take me down.
You're the best around.
But let's
Nothing's
talk
gonna
about
take
the
you
fact that you still have a song ringtone playing in 2022. Not
How can I distinguish that from your ringtone, from his ringtone?
You just know.
You know what? You know what I just know? I'm the best around. And every time my phone rings, it
Touche,
reminds me.
Mr. Radio Rahim.
But Radio Rahim, you would think, oh man, just do the right thing. Radio Rahim was cool with the boom box and all that. And it is so. But boy, that's not why I use the name Radio Rahim. It's something people used to say to tease me. It wasn't like a term of endearment or like they were trying to big up me. It was because I sound like a white man on the radio. So, yes, it was almost like in spite of Radio Rahim, they were saying that as a jab.
Wow.
And I could either get mad every time somebody said that, and it's Rahim, it's not Radio, and allow them to decide what the energy was like when that name is said. Or I could calm my mind, focus my own perception on what's happening instead of adopting theirs and realize that's got a ring to it.
Yeah.
And boy, these blacks like saying it. I will take it and say, okay, well, everybody remembers that. Everybody seems to like to say it an awful lot. It does have a ring to it. You know what? If I call myself that and I make it about what I associate Radio Rahim with.
That's right.
Which is much more like that do the right thing character. I like sounding like a person on the radio because they are articulate, well-spoken, communicate well, and they're getting paid to do exactly what I enjoy doing, being articulate, communicating well, and speaking to multiple people at one time. I am that. And so now when people say that, it doesn't create negative energy inside me. In fact, I'm like, well, guess what? All those guys in high school and grade school that may have used that name to tease me, they all still remember, oh, this is Radio Rahim. I can't remember a single one of their names.
Amen.
Wow.
Hey.
And he got a podcast on Luminary called Til This Day.
And that's why. Because just like your abusive bully host, people would shout that out at me.
That's not my story. That's not my story. I don't have to take those words that you're trying to throw over here.
Oh, no, that was just a boomerang. Those just words just came back to you. You know, whatever you put on the boomerang,
Oh
it's in
my
your hands
God.
right now.
Yeah.
So when I hear that now, it's not Deontay Wilder shouting at me in a terrible misunderstanding or cutting a minute out of a 2-minute interview and making me the whipping post for his fight promotion. It's a moment that I may have been the most successful at raising an issue through my journalistic integrity by having the courage to ask that question, to stay in the moment, unapologetic, and to push right through all that tension that you see that made that thing a viral meme, and then have the calm and presence of mind and patience and trust to let it lay.
Yes.
To wait that extra day to even respond by putting out the second video, and then wait several months before speaking on it when I was graciously invited on Rogan to have a full-throated conversation about the entire experience.
Yeah.
And it was a great place to have it. It was called The Experience for that reason. But understand, many people wanted me to talk about it, but it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right context. They just wanted to feed off of the heat and make
clicks and
it
views.
more sensational.
Yeah.
And Joe, shout out to Joe Rogan for giving me a platform where I had enough time and he was fair and gave me an opportunity to have the kind of conversation that we're having right now. One where it's a friend that I trust and we're having an honest discourse that's really meant to talk seriously about the issue and not just get clicks and, a headline.
Right. Thank you for gracing us with your time and your energy, and we appreciate your presence. But before we get out of here, I do have another question. First of all, are there any boxing aficionados in the house? Because I am not.
I mean, I dabble.
Okay.
Boxing what?
Aficionados. Okay.
That's a no. That's a hard no.
Because I feel like it would
I'm
be
clearly
I
lying,
feel like
guys. Don't
I
ask
feel
me
like it would
boxing
be remiss for us to not get some predictions from you.
Oh, no.
You don't do predictions?
I don't do predictions.
Okay.
But let me tell you why, though.
Tell me why.
Nobody knows.
But isn't it
Nobody
fun?
knows.
Isn't it
And
fun to speculate in boxing? Isn't that part of it?
it's a science.
Okay.
Here's an editorial that I will give you that I intended to put on my own platform. And here, because we're family, I feel like this is my platform too.
It is.
Science is a series of experiments to prove something. The way I approach the sport is that I take these set of circumstances, the elements involved, and we can put forward our prediction, but I find that once I publicly put forward a prediction, there's something in science where you then start to create an experiment to prove your prediction. And I'm not using scientific language,
I understand.
but there are words, that mean these things. You start to create an experiment to prove your prediction as opposed to organically going through the process and finding out what's true.
That makes a lot of sense.
My prediction carries so much weight and people are so interested in whether I'm right or wrong that I have not been able to untether my ego to being right or wrong.
That makes a whole lot of sense. That makes a heap of sense. So let me ask you this.
But let me finish
Okay.
once that happens to a journalist, to even a handicap or something like this, you can't see clearly anymore. It's as bad as betting on a fight. I'll be sitting there rooting for my ticket to come in.
Yeah.
I'll be watching now for how what I'm looking at will ultimately prove me right. And while I'm watching the fight, I'll be sitting there like, oh, I hope this happens. Just in the hope, I have cheated my scientific lens of clarity. So I guard that now by just saying, I don't know yet. I'm going to watch this experiment play out. Now, if you want to talk about what elements are in the experiment, you want to talk about the conditions of the study, you want to scientifically break down what's ahead of us, we can do that all day long. But we got to wait and find out what happens as scientists on the same day at the same time.
That's very fair and that's very intelligent. It's very esoteric. But if I were to ask you the same question privately, is that a different situation? Because you said as part of the issue is the weight in which your prediction carries as a journalist, right?
It would be less likely that I would say it here, like what conclusion I might draw from this thing. But if it was just me and you, I'd probably give you the same spiel and I'd give you two outcomes. If this happens, then this is likely to happen. But to be like, this person's going to win, I know everything, I'd still be, if I only told you, Saturday night, I'd be like, man, I'm a Kweli to think I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
I mean, my friends are on this caffeine battle rap app, and I'm on a group chat, and they were all very excited about some battle that was going on. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go watch it just so I could be in the group chat. And it was a very serious argument in the group chat about who won and who was supposed to win and who was, and I was like, yo, I can only do this for like 45 minutes with these guys. They were for 3 hours watching the next card and the next card and the next card. I was like, okay, rappers yelling at each other, I got about 45 minutes of that. But okay, so how about a top 5 boxers?
Okay, but we have to limit that to boxers who are not active.
Okay, because you want to take in the totality of someone's career?
Well, that's better than what I was going to say. I'm still covering the sport.
Right.
I can't have favorites. I try to actively not. I like guys for different reasons.
So yeah, top 5 not active.
In no particular
order.
Jack Johnson. All right, number 1.
Okay.
Jack Johnson, number 1, because Jack Johnson is number 1.
Right.
So, I don't believe boxing started until blacks were able to compete for the heavyweight championship. So anything prologue to that
sounds about right to me.
Is, you know what I mean? Just like fodder. Just like, oh, okay.
It was it was this?
Yeah, it does. It's not. Oh my God. He was that too. But it's like if everybody can't.
How many rounds is Jack Johnson going?
Oh my God, man. Countless. I mean, there's an answer to this question, but it's nothing even close to what you would think of as a fight night now. Right? Like, they were fighting more frequently. They were fighting way more rounds. There was no adherence to what that kind of punishment might be on the body.
Right.
And there is a theory that because bodies weren't what they are now then, that maybe the amount of abuse you would take from somebody who's now an athlete, it's not like what athletes were like then, but still, it's leather gloves and you're getting punched. I look at fighters for more than what they did in the ring, but what they meant in history and in society and what that moment was that they embodied. So when I give you a top 5, it has less to do with their wins and losses or even proficiency than some other boxing journalists might
It's the
use.
cultural experiences that they bring to the fight with them.
My metric is where they lie in history and where how their moment related to what was happening in the world.
I think that's a fair metric.
This is part of why I analogize boxing to so many other things.
That's how Jack Johnson can become number 1.
That's right. Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, you talk about how many rounds they fought, and like the amount of tape you can see of actual Sugar Ray Robinson is limited, and he's a popular choice.
He's considered the popular number 1 greatest choice, right?
For me, it was because he fought so often for so long. And yes, he was excellent at that. But the amount of physical, mental fortitude and resilience and tenacity, drive it take, it's unimaginable how many rounds this guy fought and how many fights he fought and how close together all this happened. I actually can't conceive of how is this true?
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah, mad swag. I've seen more pictures of him than I've seen videos of him fighting. But the guy in the picture, I like that guy.
Okay. Right.
You know. So Roy Jones
Okay.
Jr. This is not only because of what I've already said about his genius. He's a real scientist. But he made his body do things it shouldn't be able to do. He hit people from angles that aren't on the equation.
Right.
And he made it look effortless.
Yeah.
I think this guy,
Yeah, he
they
really
say
did.
ring intelligence.
Yeah.
This guy is a genius. And again, I had the great fortune of knowing him personally by covering him for all these years, and I like the guy.
Right.
It means a lot that you're a good guy.
Right.
You're not just a great fighter.
Right.
Oscar De La Hoya,
Okay.
Oscar De La Hoya.
which might surprise some.
That was one of my first fights I watched.
Oscar De La Hoya, because he's an excellent fighter. If there were a style that I would have most imitated or try to emulate is a better word than imitate, while I was really young and doing these kind of things, it was Oscar. It was in my mind.
Okay.
I thought he was a very efficient fighter. He was always smiling. I liked the Golden Boy shit. I liked that he brought, Mexicans into a light of being a poster boy. And although he went through a lot of cultural adversity for speaking English, for being clean cut in the way that he was, they thought that he was trying to separate himself from Mexico and his culture and all that stuff. And I didn't see it that way, but I related to that. He was the first fighter to create a major promoting boxing company that really has done historic fights consistently since it's been in existence. And it's had its trials and tribulations, to be sure. But for him to have the mind to even do that, have the respect in the business to do that, he put a lot of Mexican fighters on who would have otherwise not gotten the kind of contracts that they did get. I thought Oscar De La Hoya, because, you know what they say, you stay around long enough to watch yourself become the villain. He's human. He's an athlete. He's a guy like anybody else, and he's going to have his personal stuff. And so because he's been around so long and the world has changed, so much more about people than you otherwise would, the way people view Oscar today, I don't think is taking into account the totality of his offering to the sport.
Understand.
In the long lens of history, Oscar's an icon. This guy really did a lot, and he's an excellent, excellent fighter. So we can't just be throw Oscar away because there's an embarrassing this or a silly photo of that, or right now he's not on top as Golden Boy. But there was a long time when Golden Boy was the only game in town. Don't forget, Floyd Mayweather fought under the Golden Boy banner for many of his most popular major money-making fights. It was Golden Boy that was the promoter. So shout out to Oscar De La Hoya. And that final slot for me would have to go to Sugar Ray Leonard.
Oh, wow. Okay, yes.
Sugar Ray Leonard. Because, again, what he symbolized at the time that he was fighting, and he was in an era, what some consider the last real golden era of boxing, to be, again, a golden boy, but for a black community. And he took his shots for not being as political as some people would have liked him to be. He was in the Reagan White House. You know, he was able to sell product like other fighters weren't. And, you know, he progressed through his career in the way that he felt most advantageous to himself. But he is a great image. Everybody can't be that guy. And I think he was true to himself. I don't think he was denying anything inside him. He was putting forward an image that could be looked up to, an image that was marketable, and he was successful. He did the work necessary, and he made it look easy, so people said, everything was given to him. One of the greatest compliments that you could get when you work hard and accomplish and achieve and meet those goals, and for somebody saying, they gave it to him, it's too easy. Because that means that not only you did it, boy, you did it in style. People didn't even see you sweat.
Yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the People's Party is proud to have Radio Rahim as a guest. Thank you so much.
Well, you couldn't be as proud to have me on this show as I am to be invited and to sit here, because not unlike these people I've mentioned, as I'm coming up, I'm watching Kweli as one of those icons, and I have made a friend of you, and to be sitting here now engaging in an art that I have so true and dear to my heart, watching you make it look easy, watching you be a great good man is the greatest gift I could get today, and I really pray that I get to see you tomorrow. But if not, boy, I'm happy we had today.
I love and appreciate you.